Hi guys, and welcome to America History Tales. Tonight we step into a quiet winter evening in 1931 where you are standing beside a magnificent ocean liner, watching warm golden lights shimmer against the dark harbour water. You hear distant whistles, gentle waves, and the footsteps of travellers beginning a journey across the Atlantic. You are about to enter a world of polished wood, velvet chairs, and silver service where every small detail promises comfort. Of course, there is one tiny problem: you probably won't survive this voyage if you expect the ocean to behave like a calm bathtub, because winter storms have a way of reminding everyone who is really in charge. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me where you are listening from and what your local time is as you settle in. Now, dim the lights and allow yourself to step gently into this floating world. You stand at the edge of the harbour, wrapped in a heavy coat that smells faintly of wool and winter air. The cold touches your cheeks while port workers move around you with practiced speed. The year is 1931 and the great ocean liners of the era are symbols of confidence, engineering, and imagination. You look up at the enormous ship beside you and feel a strange mixture of excitement and calm. It does not seem like a machine, it feels more like a grand hotel that has somehow learned to float. Your luggage disappears into the hands of attentive stewards, and you're guided toward the entrance reserved for first-class passengers. The sound changes as soon as you step inside. The sharp cries of the harbour fade behind thick walls, replaced by the soft murmur of conversation, the gentle movement of shoes across polished floors, and the distant clinking of glassware from elegant rooms nearby. You run your fingers along the smooth wooden panels and notice the careful craftsmanship surrounding you. The walls are decorated with beautiful details because luxury ocean travel in this period is designed to impress before you even reach your room. A simple hallway is transformed into a statement of wealth and comfort. The ship wants you to forget you are thousands of miles above a deep and restless ocean. As you walk deeper inside, you notice passengers carrying themselves in different ways. Some move with the confidence of people who have travelled many times before. Others look around with the wide eyes of newcomers trying to absorb everything. Everyone has a reason for crossing the Atlantic. Some are travelling for business, some for family visits, and some simply because the journey itself feels like an adventure. You probably noticed that the ship has its own social world. There are dining rooms, lounges, libraries, music spaces, and quiet corners where people can temporarily escape the ordinary concerns waiting on land. In 1931, ocean liners often offered experiences that rivaled luxury hotels. Many first-class passengers expected excellent meals, entertainment, and personal attention from the crew. A fascinating detail from this era is that some wealthy travellers brought their own small comforts from home, including favourite books, special clothing, and even personal sleeping items. The idea of creating a familiar little world while travelling was not new, but on a luxury liner it became almost an art form. The ocean might be enormous, but your private space could feel wonderfully protected. Historians often discuss how these ships represented both progress and a changing society. One common view is that they showed the height of industrial achievement, combining massive size with careful design. Another perspective suggests they also reflected the strong divisions between social classes during the early 20th century. Historians still argue whether these liners should be remembered mainly as marvels of human creativity or as floating symbols of inequality. You continue toward your suite, listening to the quiet rhythm of the ship around you. Somewhere below, engines begin their endless work. You cannot see the thousands of moving parts that will carry you across the Atlantic, but you can feel a subtle vibration beneath your feet. It's almost like a heartbeat, steady and reassuring. The hallway lights glow softly, creating pools of warmth against the winter darkness outside. You imagine the ocean waiting beyond the windows, black and endless. While inside this vessel, people are preparing for dinner, conversations, and sleep. There is something comforting about being surrounded by strangers who are all temporarily sharing the same floating home. The liner itself is part of a larger story. In the early 1930s, passenger ships were still central to international travel, even as airplanes were beginning to capture public attention. The journey across the Atlantic remained a major event that could take several days, giving passengers time to slow down and experience travel as a gradual transition rather than a quick movement from one place to another. A quirky little piece of maritime culture is that some passengers developed superstitions about the first moments of a voyage. Certain travellers believed small rituals, lucky objects, or particular habits could bring a smoother crossing. A tiny charm hidden in a suitcase may not have changed the weather, but it could certainly make someone feel more prepared when the waves became dramatic. Now you reach the door of your suite. The steward opens it with a polite smile, revealing a peaceful room waiting just for you. The space feels carefully arranged, almost like someone has prepared a private retreat in the middle of the sea. You see a neatly made bed, comfortable seating, and details that remind you this is not simply transportation, this is an experience. You step inside and let the door close gently behind you. The sounds of the corridor become softer. The movement of the ship becomes more noticeable. Outside, the winter Atlantic waits patiently beneath the night sky. For now, you are safe in your elegant room. You've only just begun the voyage, and there are many hours ahead before the ocean reveals its full personality. The ship continues to prepare for departure, carrying dreams, worries, conversations, and countless private stories with it. You settle into the quiet, listening to the distant sounds of a world beginning to move across the water. Before you rest, you notice the smallest details around you, the faint scent of fresh linen, the gentle warmth of the cabin, and the quiet footsteps passing outside your door. Every sound seems softened by the thick walls of the liner. You realize that this journey is not only about reaching another shore, it is about the moments between places, the peaceful pauses where the ocean surrounds you and time appears to slow. The first thing you notice about your suite is the silence, not complete silence, because a ship at sea is never truly quiet. There is always a gentle collection of sounds beneath the surface. The soft hum of machinery, the occasional creak of the vessel adjusting to the water, and the distant footsteps of the crew create a strange kind of lullaby. You stand in the middle of your room and realize that this space has been designed to make you forget how far away the solid ground has become. Your eyes move slowly across the details around you. The bed is carefully prepared with crisp linens, inviting you to sink into comfort after a long day of travel. A small table waits near the window, ready for letters, books, or perhaps a cup of tea while you watch the ocean pass. The furniture feels sturdy but elegant, built for travelers who expect refinement even while crossing thousands of miles of unpredictable water. You open a drawer and find that everything has its place. The designers of luxury liners understood that comfort was not only about expensive materials, it was about organization, convenience, and creating a sense that someone had considered every possible need. A passenger could spend days or even weeks aboard a ship, so the suite had to become a temporary home. You notice the small touches that separate this room from an ordinary cabin. There are polished fixtures, carefully chosen fabrics, and thoughtful storage spaces. Even the lighting feels different from the harsh brightness of modern spaces. It creates a warm glow that encourages you to slow down. The room seems to whisper that there is no need to rush. You place your belongings away and begin to settle into your new surroundings. The movement of the ship beneath you is gentle at first. It is not a dramatic rocking motion, but a subtle reminder that your entire world is floating. You might expect this to feel unsettling, yet there is something strangely peaceful about it. The ocean becomes a constant companion rather than something to fear. Luxury liners of this period were built with impressive attention to passenger experience. Many ships included advanced heating systems, electric lighting, private bathrooms in some accommodations, and carefully planned ventilation. These features represented the height of modern comfort in the early 20th century. In 1931, having reliable electricity throughout a large passenger vessel was still a remarkable achievement, especially when you consider the challenge of maintaining such systems far from land. You walk toward the window and look outside. The glass reflects your own face for a moment before you focus on the darkness beyond. Somewhere out there is the Atlantic, stretching toward another continent. The harbour lights appear distant now, and you begin to feel the unusual sensation of leaving one world behind and entering another. A curious little detail from ocean liner life is that some luxury passengers treated their cabins almost like personal decorating projects. They carried framed photographs, favourite ornaments, and small objects that reminded them of home. A wealthy traveller might cross the ocean surrounded by familiar items, creating a miniature version of their private life inside a moving ship. It sounds a little excessive, but after all, if you are going to cross an ocean, why not bring your favourite lamp or your lucky teacup? You sit for a moment and imagine the conversations happening in other suites nearby. A businessman may be reviewing documents, a couple may be discussing their plans after arrival, a child may be exploring every corner of the ship with endless curiosity. Every room contains a different story, and you are only one person among hundreds or thousands sharing this temporary floating neighbourhood. You also begin to understand the importance of privacy on a luxury liner. In a world where many people lived in crowded cities and busy households, having a private suite could feel like a rare escape. Your cabin becomes a place where you can close the door, breathe deeply, and enjoy a few moments away from the movement of society. The steward returns quietly to make sure everything is comfortable. You notice the skill involved in this simple interaction. The crew members are trained to anticipate needs without interrupting the passenger's experience. They move through the ship almost like invisible guardians, keeping everything running smoothly while receiving little attention compared with the grand rooms they maintain. The relationship between passengers and crew reveals another side of life aboard these ships. The elegance experienced by first-class travellers depended on the enormous amount of work happening behind the scenes. Meals needed preparation, rooms needed cleaning, equipment needed maintenance, and thousands of small tasks had to be completed every day. Researchers who study maritime history often examine this contrast between luxury above deck and labour below. Some historians suggest these ships represented a beautiful combination of human cooperation and engineering. Others emphasize the strict social hierarchy that existed on board. Scholars continue to debate whether the ocean liners of this era were places where different worlds came together or carefully separated spaces where class boundaries remained strong. You return to the small sitting area of your suite and allow yourself to relax. The day's excitement begins to fade. The sounds outside become softer, and your thoughts become slower. You imagine the ship preparing for the journey ahead, with crew members checking equipment, passengers finishing conversations, and the vast ocean waiting patiently. There is a strange comfort in knowing that everyone aboard is sharing the same uncertainty. No matter how elegant the dining room or how expensive the suite, every person is still surrounded by the same Atlantic water. The ocean does not care about titles, wealth, or reputation. It simply stretches beneath the ship, powerful and endless. You pull back the curtain slightly and watch the darkness outside. Perhaps somewhere nearby, another passenger is doing the same thing, quietly looking into the night and wondering about the journey ahead. These small private moments are what make historical stories feel alive. The famous names, the grand designs, and the impressive technology are fascinating, but the ordinary human experiences are what truly remain. You prepare for your first night aboard the liner. The bed looks inviting, the room feels warm, and the gentle movement beneath you becomes almost soothing. You remember that this is only the beginning. Soon the harbour will disappear completely, the open Atlantic will surround you, and the winter weather waiting ahead will test this magnificent vessel. For now, you remain inside your peaceful suite, listening to the quiet rhythm of the ship. The world outside grows darker, but your little room glows softly. You are no longer standing at the edge of the journey, you are part of it. The first morning of the voyage begins with a gentle change in the rhythm beneath you. You wake before you fully remember where you are, and for a few peaceful seconds your mind searches for familiar sounds. Then you hear it, the quiet vibration of the liner moving through the water, the soft knocking of waves against the hull, the distant footsteps of someone walking along the corridor outside your suite. You open your eyes and look around the elegant room once again. The curtains move slightly as fresh air slips through the cabin. The scent of clean linen mixes with a faint trace of polished wood, creating an atmosphere that feels both luxurious and strangely comforting. You are no longer simply visiting the ship. For a little while, this floating palace is your entire world. You rise slowly and prepare for the day ahead. Somewhere beyond your door, hundreds of passengers are beginning their own routines. Some are already dressed for breakfast, carefully choosing clothing suitable for the social expectations of the time. Others are still enjoying the quiet privacy of their cabins, taking advantage of a rare morning when there is nowhere urgent to be. When you step into the corridor, you notice how different the ship feels compared with the busy harbour from yesterday. The excitement of departure has settled into a calm routine. The voices are softer. The footsteps are slower. Everyone is adjusting to the strange experience of living on a moving ocean. You walk toward a window at the end of the passage and look outside. The familiar shoreline has disappeared. There is only open water stretching in every direction. The sight is both beautiful and slightly humbling. The Atlantic does not look like a simple path between two places. It looks like a vast, endless landscape. The liner continues forward with impressive confidence. In 1931, large passenger ships were among the greatest achievements of transportation technology. These vessels connected continents and carried thousands of people across oceans that had once seemed almost impossible to cross. The famous age of ocean liners represented a period when ships were not only practical machines, but also symbols of national pride and engineering ambition. As you explore the public areas, you notice how carefully the ship creates different moods. The grand staircase invites admiration. The lounges encourage conversation. The reading rooms offer quiet escapes. Every space seems designed with a purpose. Even walking from one room to another becomes part of the experience. You pass by passengers discussing the voyage in low voices. Some are fascinated by the size of the ship. Others talk about the weather reports they heard before departure. A few experienced travellers act completely relaxed, as though crossing the Atlantic in winter is nothing more than taking a short train ride. Their confidence is impressive, although perhaps slightly questionable when the ocean decides to become dramatic. You probably feel a little amused watching people behave so normally while surrounded by so much water. Someone is reading a newspaper, someone is writing a letter, someone is planning the evening's entertainment. Meanwhile, beneath everyone's polished shoes, the ocean continues moving in its own ancient rhythm. A fascinating and unusual piece of ocean liner culture is the practice of carrying shipboard pets. Some passengers brought small animals along on long voyages, especially wealthy travellers who did not want to leave beloved companions behind. Special arrangements were sometimes made for these animals, creating yet another tiny world of comfort within the larger floating one. It is a charming reminder that even in a grand historical journey, people still wanted the familiar warmth of home. You continue walking and eventually reach a place where you can watch the crew at work. The movement around you is organized and precise. Officers check information, stewards assist passengers, and workers perform countless tasks that most travelers never notice. The smooth appearance of the ship depends on a huge amount of careful effort. The departure from land also changes the way time feels. On shore, people measure their days by streets, buildings, and schedules connected to the outside world. Here, your attention shifts toward meals, conversations, views from windows, and the changing moods of the sea. The journey encourages a slower pace. You find a comfortable chair near a window and watch the water. The wake behind the ship creates a long white trail that slowly disappears into the distance. It is almost hypnotic. You begin to understand why many travellers described ocean voyages as experiences that transformed their sense of time. Of course, not everyone aboard feels completely peaceful. Some passengers struggle with seasickness, especially as the ship encounters stronger movement. The elegant dining rooms and beautiful decorations cannot completely change the reality that the vessel is surrounded by powerful natural forces. The ocean always has the final word. Historians still argue whether the golden age of ocean travel should be remembered mainly as a period of extraordinary innovation, or as a final moment of old-world luxury before transportation changed forever. Some see these liners as monuments to human creativity. Others view them as reminders of a society divided by wealth and opportunity. The truth, as often happens with history, contains pieces of both perspectives. You return to your suite later in the morning and notice how different it feels now. Yesterday it was an unfamiliar room waiting for a traveller. Today it feels like your own quiet corner of the Atlantic. Your books rest where you left them. Your belongings have found their places. The gentle movement of the ship feels less strange. You sit near the window and allow yourself to simply watch. Clouds drift slowly above the water. The horizon seems endless. The ship continues forward, carrying everyone toward an unknown destination. There is something deeply peaceful about being between places. You are not where you started, and you have not yet arrived where you are going. You exist in a small moment suspended between two shores. Outside, the winter Atlantic remains cold and powerful. The crew continues monitoring conditions. The passengers continue their routines. The great liner continues its journey with steady determination. For now, you enjoy the calm, you breathe in the quiet atmosphere of your suite and listen to the distant heartbeat of the engines. The voyage has truly begun, and the ocean ahead holds both beauty and uncertainty. Soon, the weather will change, the gentle waves will become stronger. The comfortable routines of the liner will be tested by the winter sea. But before that arrives, you have time to enjoy the elegance of this remarkable floating world. You settle back into your chair, watching the endless water, knowing that every mile carries you deeper into the story of this unforgettable Atlantic crossing. The afternoon settles over the liner with a gentle rhythm, and you begin to understand that this ship is not simply carrying passengers from one continent to another. It is creating an entire temporary society surrounded by water. Every corridor, every lounge, and every quiet corner has its own atmosphere. You walk through the ship slowly, allowing yourself to notice the details that most travellers might rush past. The first thing that catches your attention is the sound. The ship has a language of its own. You hear the low vibration of the engines beneath your feet, the soft footsteps of passengers moving between rooms, and the occasional announcement carried through the halls. There is always movement, but it never feels chaotic. The liner seems to breathe calmly, as though it has been practicing this journey for years. You enter one of the elegant public rooms and notice passengers gathering for conversation. The space is warm, with comfortable chairs arranged for relaxation. Some people read newspapers while others discuss politics, business, and family news from home. In this era, a voyage across the Atlantic could become a small social event, where strangers met, exchanged stories, and sometimes formed friendships that continued long after the ship reached its destination. By the early 1930s, ocean liners had become essential links between Europe and North America. These ships carried tourists, immigrants, business travellers, diplomats, and families separated by distance. Although air travel was developing, Crossing the Atlantic by the ship remained the dominant choice for most long-distance passengers because aircraft could not yet offer the same combination of range, reliability, and comfort. You pause near a display or decorative feature in the room and think about how much planning went into every part of the vessel. Designers were not only creating transportation, they were creating an environment where people could spend days without feeling trapped. The goal was to make the journey itself feel valuable. You continue exploring and discover spaces dedicated to leisure. There might be a library filled with books, a music room where performances take place, or areas where passengers can simply sit and watch the sea. These places encourage a slower style of living that feels almost unusual compared with modern travel. Imagine spending several days without constant messages, notifications, or the endless rush of information that follows people today. Your biggest distraction is the ocean outside the window, a conversation nearby, or the promise of dinner later in the evening. It sounds peaceful. Although you might eventually discover that even the most luxurious ship cannot stop someone from wondering what is happening back on land. A fascinating little piece of liner culture is that some ships offered passengers carefully organized daily programs. Travelers could participate in activities such as games, lectures, exercise sessions, and social gatherings. A person could wake up in the morning, attend a planned event, enjoy lunch, listen to music, and join evening entertainment without ever stepping onto land. The ship became a floating schedule of experiences. You stroll toward another part of the vessel and notice the differences between spaces. Some areas are designed for public admiration, with impressive decorations meant to make visitors stop and stare. Other areas are quieter, created for private conversations or peaceful moments alone. The contrast reveals something important about luxury travel. It was not only about showing wealth, it was also about controlling the feeling of the environment around you. The crew continues moving through the ship with remarkable efficiency. You see stewards carrying out their responsibilities, keeping rooms prepared and assisting passengers. Behind the polished appearance of the liner is a complex organization of workers making thousands of small decisions every day. A forgotten detail about early 20th century ships is that many crew members developed deep familiarity with the personalities of regular passengers. A steward who worked several voyages might remember preferences, routines, and small habits. In a world before many modern conveniences, this personal attention became part of the luxury experience. You begin to notice how the ship creates a delicate balance. Passengers are encouraged to feel relaxed and carefree, while the crew must remain alert and prepared. The ocean outside may look peaceful, but everyone understands that conditions can change quickly. Experts have long questioned whether luxury liners of this period represented the peak of elegant travel or the final chapter of a social world that was already disappearing. Some researchers focus on the incredible craftsmanship, technological achievements, and cultural importance of these ships. Others point to the strict divisions between passenger classes and the difficult realities behind the scenes. The interpretation remains contested because the same vessel can tell very different stories depending on where you stand. You return to your suite as evening approaches, the light outside has changed, and the grey winter sky creates a quiet mood over the ocean. The room feels familiar now. You know where everything is, and the gentle motion of the ship no longer surprises you. You sit near the window and watch the waves. They rise and fall in endless patterns, reflecting the fading light. The scene feels almost timeless. Generations before you looked at the same ocean and wondered what waited beyond the horizon. There is comfort in the routine of shipboard life. A meal will arrive at a certain hour. The lights will glow warmly in the corridors. The engines will continue their steady work. Even though you are far from home, the liner provides a sense of order. Yet beneath that comfort, you sense the power of the Atlantic. The ocean is beautiful because it is unpredictable. It creates the adventure that makes the journey meaningful. Without the vast water surrounding you, this would simply be a hotel that happens to move. As night approaches, you hear distant sounds from the dining rooms and lounges. Passengers prepare for another evening of conversation and entertainment. Somewhere below, crew members continue their careful work. The ship carries on, confident and graceful. You look around your suite one more time and appreciate the unusual situation you have entered. You are living inside a piece of history, surrounded by technology, traditions, and human stories from a world that no longer exists in quite the same way. The calm waters beneath the liner give you a sense of security, but the winter Atlantic remains ahead. The weather reports are being watched. The crew is prepared. The passengers are enjoying their evening, unaware of how quickly the mood of the ocean can change. For now, though, the ship glides peacefully forward. You settle into the quiet comfort of your room, listening to the distant heartbeat of the engines and the endless whisper of water against the hull. The journey continues, carrying you farther from the familiar shore and deeper into the remarkable world of luxury ocean travel. The evening arrives slowly, and you notice a subtle change in the atmosphere around the liner. Earlier, the ship felt like a grand floating hotel enjoying a peaceful journey. Now, as darkness spreads across the Atlantic, there is a different feeling in the air. It is not fear, not yet. It is simply awareness. The ocean outside your window has become harder to read, and the winter sky carries a colder, heavier appearance. You stand near the window of your suite and watch the horizon disappear into the darkness. During the day, the sea seemed endless and beautiful. At night, it feels even larger. The faint reflection of your own room appears in the glass, blending with the black water beyond. You are surrounded by warmth and elegance, yet only a thin layer of steel separates you from the powerful Atlantic below. The ship continues its steady progress, and for a while, nothing seems unusual. Passengers gather for dinner wearing carefully chosen clothing. Conversations continue in the lounges. Music drifts through the public rooms. The ordinary routines of luxury travel continue because people have always been skilled at creating comfort even when surrounded by uncertainty. You make your way through the corridors and notice that the crew is paying closer attention to their surroundings. They move with the same calm professionalism. But experienced sailors understand the ocean better than anyone. They notice changes that passengers might miss. A shift in the wind, a different feeling in the movement of the ship, a change in the sound of waves striking the hull. During the winter months, Atlantic crossings could be challenging because storms often formed over the cold waters between continents. Historical records show that many ocean liners faced rough conditions during this season, requiring strong construction, skilled navigation, and experienced crews. The ships were built to handle difficult environments, but even the largest vessels had to respect the forces of nature. You return to your suite and feel the first signs of the changing weather. The movement beneath your feet becomes slightly more noticeable. The gentle rhythm that had almost disappeared into the background now reminds you that the ship is travelling through a living, moving ocean. You sit comfortably in your chair and listen. The sounds are different tonight. The engines seem deeper. The occasional creaking of the ship feels more pronounced. The walls around you remain elegant and secure, but the Atlantic is beginning to make itself known. A curious detail from maritime history is that some sailors and passengers believed storms could be predicted through unusual signs, including the behavior of animals or certain changes in the atmosphere. While these beliefs were not scientifically reliable, they reveal how people living near the sea developed their own traditions for understanding an environment that could never be fully controlled. You think about the passengers around you. Some may be completely unaware of the worsening conditions. Others may be standing by their own windows, watching the waves and wondering if tomorrow's weather will bring a more dramatic experience. A few experienced travellers might simply continue reading their books, trusting the ship and its crew. That confidence comes from decades of progress in shipbuilding. One of the remarkable achievements of the early 20th century was the creation of enormous passenger vessels that combined size, speed, and comfort. These ships contained advanced navigation equipment for their time, powerful engines, and carefully designed structures meant to protect passengers during long ocean journeys. You walk toward the dining room and notice that the elegant atmosphere remains. Tables are decorated beautifully. Glasses reflect the soft lighting. People laugh and talk as though they are sitting in a restaurant on solid ground. There is something almost magical about this ability to maintain normal life in an extraordinary setting. Of course, the ocean has a sense of humour about human confidence. You may have a beautifully prepared dinner, polished silverware, and a comfortable chair. But the sea does not care how expensive your evening clothes are. It can remind everyone aboard that they are still guests on its enormous surface. As the night continues, the storm grows stronger. The wind begins to press against the ship, creating new sounds around the vessel. The waves become more energetic, and the liner responds with deeper movements. You feel the floor shift slightly beneath you, a sensation that is unfamiliar but strangely fascinating. Researchers who study maritime history continue to examine how passengers experience these moments of uncertainty. Some suggest that luxury travellers often remembered storms as thrilling adventures rather than frightening events because they trusted the technology and organisation surrounding them. Others believe the private experiences of passengers varied greatly depending on their background, personality, and previous relationship with the sea. There is still discussion about whether these voyages created a sense of shared courage among passengers or simply highlighted different levels of comfort and privilege. You return to the peaceful space of your suite and prepare for the night ahead. The steward has arranged everything carefully, and the room remains warm despite the cold world outside. The contrast feels almost dreamlike. Outside, the Atlantic is becoming restless. Inside, you have soft bedding, gentle lighting, and a place to rest. You remember the small details from your first arrival, the polished wood, the fresh linens, the feeling of stepping away from the harbour and entering a different world. Now that world is moving through a winter storm, and you are experiencing another side of ocean travel. The ship continues forward. It does not stop because the weather has changed. The crew adjusts. The passengers adapt. The great liner follows its route across the dark Atlantic. You lie back and listen to the sounds around you. The storm is not yet at its strongest, but you can feel its presence. Each movement of the ship tells a story. Each wave outside carries the reminder that this journey is not only about luxury, it is also about resilience. As your eyes begin to grow heavy, you realize something unusual. The storm, despite its power, creates a strange kind of calm. The steady motion, the distant sounds, and the warmth of your suite combine into a rhythm that almost feels like a lullaby. The ocean is changing around you, but for this moment, you remain comfortable and protected. The liner continues into the winter night, carrying you deeper into the heart of the Atlantic storm. The storm has fully arrived by the time you awaken again. Though you are not sure exactly what time it is, on a ship in the middle of the Atlantic, hours begin to feel different. Without the familiar signs of land, your sense of time becomes connected to the movement of the vessel, the changing light outside, and the steady routines continuing around you. You remain beneath the warm blankets for a moment, listening. The sounds of the liner have changed overnight. The gentle vibration of the engines is still there, but now it is joined by deeper noises. The wind moves around the outside of the ship with a long, distant whistle. Waves strike the hull with more force. The room shifts slightly as the vessel rises and falls with the ocean. It is a strange experience because everything around you still suggests comfort. The polished furniture remains untouched. The soft lighting creates the same peaceful atmosphere. Your suite looks exactly as it did yesterday, yet the world outside has transformed into something far more dramatic. You slowly get ready for the day and notice how carefully the ship has been designed for moments like this. The furniture is sturdy, objects are secured. The layout of the room allows passengers to move safely even when the ocean becomes unpredictable. Luxury does not mean ignoring nature. It means preparing for it while making the experience as comfortable as possible. As you step into the corridor, you notice fewer passengers walking around. Some have chosen to remain in their rooms until the weather improves. Others move carefully, holding onto railings as the ship continues through the rough water. The elegant confidence of yesterday has been replaced by a quieter mood. You pass a steward who offers a polite greeting. The crew members remain composed. Even though they are working in much more difficult conditions, their calm behaviour is part of the experience passengers expect. But behind that calm is training, discipline, and constant attention. Historical accounts of Atlantic travel often describe winter storms as some of the greatest challenges faced by ocean liners. Before modern satellite weather system and advanced forecasting, crews relied on radio reports, observations, and experience to navigate changing conditions. The ability of officers to interpret weather patterns and make careful decisions was essential for every successful crossing. You return to your suite and look through the window again. The view is almost completely different from the peaceful ocean you watched before. The waves are larger now, and the sky has become a mixture of grey clouds and shifting light. The Atlantic appears endless and powerful, stretching beyond anything your eyes can measure. A surprisingly unusual part of shipboard life was the way passengers developed personal strategies for dealing with storms. Some carried special objects they believed brought good fortune. Others created small routines, such as drinking tea at a certain hour or wearing a particular item of clothing because it made them feel more comfortable. These habits might seem amusing today, but during a difficult voyage, small rituals could provide a sense of control. You decide to explore the ship carefully, wanting to understand how life continues during the storm. The dining rooms are quieter than usual, but the crew continues preparing meals. Tables are arranged carefully, and staff members work to maintain the same level of service passengers expect. There is something impressive about this dedication. The storm outside cannot be seen from every corner of the ship. In some rooms, people are still reading, talking, or resting. The liner creates separate worlds. Some passengers experience the full force of the ocean through every movement, while others remain surrounded by calm surroundings. You find a comfortable place to sit and watch the passengers nearby. Their reactions are different. Some look fascinated by the experience. Some appear slightly nervous. Some seem determined to behave as though nothing unusual is happening. Human beings have always found interesting ways to respond when confronted with situations beyond their control. Experts continue to discuss how passengers in luxury settings experience disasters and near disasters differently from those travelling in less comfortable conditions. Some researchers suggest that wealthier passengers often had more emotional space to process danger because they were surrounded by resources and assistance. Others point out that fear itself does not disappear because someone has a nicer room. A beautiful suite cannot completely remove the awareness that you are surrounded by a powerful ocean. The storm continues through the day, and you begin to notice the rhythm of the ship. At first, every movement feels surprising. Later, your body begins to understand it. The rise and fall become almost predictable. The sounds that once seemed unfamiliar become part of the background. You think about the incredible engineering beneath you. The ship is not simply floating randomly. It is a carefully designed structure created by thousands of people who understood materials, mathematics, and the challenges of the sea. Every part of the vessel has a purpose, from the massive engines below to the smallest details of passenger comfort. The evening approaches, and the storm remains outside, yet inside your suite you experience a strange sense of peace. The warmth of the room contrasts with the cold Atlantic air. The soft bedding invites rest. The steady movement of the ship creates a rhythm that feels almost natural. You remember the calm departure from the harbour, the excitement of exploring the liner, and the first peaceful hours of the journey. Now you are experiencing the part of the voyage that every traveller knows exists but hopes will remain distant. The ocean has revealed its strength. Still, there is beauty in the experience. The storm reminds you that this luxury liner is not a building standing safely on land. It is a moving world surrounded by nature. The comfort feels more meaningful because it exists in such a challenging environment. You settle into your suite as the wind continues outside. The lights remain warm. The ship continues forward. The crew continues their work. The passengers continue adapting. The storm may be powerful, but the liner remains steady beneath you. With each passing hour, you become more familiar with the sounds of the Atlantic night. What once felt strange now feels almost reassuring. You close your eyes and listen to the waves. The ocean speaks in a language older than any ship, and for a while, you simply allow yourself to listen. The storm slowly becomes part of your world at first. Every movement of the liner demanded your attention. Each deeper roll of the ship made you pause. Each louder crash of waves against the hull reminded you that the Atlantic was far larger than anything you had experienced on land. Now, after spending hours surrounded by the sounds and motion of the vessel, you begin to adjust. You wake to the familiar rhythm of the ship rising and settling beneath you. The storm has not disappeared, but there is a strange comfort in recognizing its patterns. The wind outside no longer feels like a sudden visitor. It has become another presence aboard the liner, almost like a quiet companion traveling alongside you. You dress carefully and step into the corridor. The elegant surroundings remain unchanged, but the mood among passengers has shifted. Conversations are quieter. People speak more thoughtfully. The storm has created a shared experience. And even strangers seem connected by the simple fact that everyone is living through the same powerful Atlantic weather. You walk toward the main public areas and notice small scenes unfolding everywhere. A passenger sits near a window reading a book, occasionally looking up at the waves. Another traveller writes a letter, describing the journey to someone waiting across the ocean. A group gathers around a table, discussing the storm with a mixture of excitement and curiosity. This is one of the fascinating aspects of long ocean voyages. A ship creates a temporary community. People who would never meet in ordinary circumstances suddenly share meals, conversations, and unexpected moments together. The ocean removes many of the distractions of everyday life and places everyone inside the same moving environment. During the early 20th century, ocean liners played an important role in connecting families, businesses, and cultures across continents. Millions of passengers travelled by sea during this period, including immigrants searching for new opportunities, tourists exploring foreign countries, and professionals building international connections. The ships were not only symbols of luxury, they were also important links in a global network. You enter a lounge where passengers are gathering despite the rough conditions. The room feels warm and chic. Lamps create a gentle glow, chairs are arranged for conversation, and the sound of the storm outside becomes a distant background noise. It almost feels like the weather is happening in another world. A curious custom from life aboard these ships was the tradition of sending postcards from the voyage itself. Passengers often purchased cards showing the liner and mailed them after reaching their destination. These small souvenirs allowed people to share the feeling of adventure with friends and family. Today, they provide historians with glimpses into how ordinary travellers experience these famous journeys. You imagine someone decades later discovering one of those postcards tucked away in an old box. A few simple words written during a stormy Atlantic crossing could preserve a memory of a moment that felt enormous to the person experiencing it. You observe the different groups of passengers and begin to notice the social patterns of the ship. The wealthy travellers in first class have access to elegant rooms and personalised service. But even within this privileged environment, people still create their own circles. Some friendships form quickly, others remain polite but distant. The liner reflects the society that created it. There is beauty, innovation, and creativity everywhere, but there are also clear boundaries. The spaces people occupy, the services they receive, and the experiences they enjoy are shaped by their position aboard the ship. The historical interpretation of these vessels remains divided over how they should be remembered. Some experts emphasize the extraordinary craftsmanship, the elegance of travel, and the way these ships brought people closer together. Others focus on the inequality built into their design, where different classes experienced very different versions of the same voyage. The story of the ocean liner contains both admiration and criticism. You continue through the ship and eventually find yourself near a place where you can observe some of the crew's work. The difference between the passenger's experience and the worker's experience becomes clear. While guests are encouraged to relax, the crew must remain focused. They maintain order, safety, and comfort regardless of the weather. You watch as the steward carefully checks details that most passengers would never notice. A chair is adjusted, a hallway is kept clear, supplies are organized. These small actions may appear ordinary, but together they create the feeling of effortless luxury. One overlooked detail from the period reveals how carefully ships managed passenger comfort. Some liners maintained strict routines for cleaning, ventilation, and room preparation because freshness and order were considered essential parts of the luxury experience. A passenger was not simply paying for a seat on a ship, they were paying for the feeling that every inconvenience had already been handled. You return to your suite later in the afternoon. The room welcomes you like a familiar retreat. You remove your coat, sit near the window, and watch the waves moving beneath the grey sky. The storm has changed your relationship with the ship. Before, you admired the decorations, the furniture, and the impressive design. Now, you appreciate something deeper. You understand the teamwork, engineering, and determination required to keep this floating world moving through difficult conditions. You think about the people around you. Each passenger has a different reason for crossing the Atlantic. Each person carries memories, hopes, worries, and expectations. Some are beginning new chapters, some are returning home, some are simply chasing the feeling of adventure. The ship carries all these stories together. As evening arrives again, the storm begins to soften slightly. The waves are still strong, but the atmosphere feels calmer. The liner continues forward with patience and confidence. The same engines that carried you away from the harbour continue their steady work beneath your feet. You settle into your chair and listen once more. The sounds of the ship have become familiar. The distant movement of crew members, the quiet conversations outside your door, the endless rhythm of the ocean. The journey is no longer something happening around you. It is something you're experiencing from within, and as the winter night surrounds the liner, you realize that this voyage is not only a trip across the Atlantic, it is a small chapter of history, lived one quiet moment at a time. The next hours aboard the liner reveal something you had not fully noticed before. The ship has two different personalities. During calm moments, it feels like a grand hotel, drifting peacefully across the ocean. During a storm, it becomes something more impressive. It becomes a carefully organized machine where every person has a responsibility and every movement matters. You wake again to the familiar sounds of the vessel. The wind has weakened slightly, but the ocean remains restless. The room still moves gently beneath you, reminding you that the Atlantic has not completely settled. You sit up slowly, allowing yourself a moment to appreciate the unusual situation. Few people in their everyday lives experience the strange comfort of waking up inside a moving piece of history. You prepare for the morning and notice how the smallest details have become meaningful. The cup waiting on the table, the neatly arranged belongings, the warm light entering through the window. These simple things feel different because they exist in such an extraordinary place. When you leave your suite, you decide to explore areas of the ship you have not yet visited. The public rooms are beautiful, but you're curious about what keeps this floating world alive behind the scenes. You move through quieter passages and notice a different atmosphere. Here, the decorations are less dramatic. The focus is not on impressing passengers, but on function. Doors open and close. Workers move with purpose, and the supplies are carried from one location to another. The hidden parts of the liner reveal the enormous effort required to maintain the elegant experience above. A defining feature of this era was the remarkable growth of large-scale passenger ship construction. During the early 1900s, shipbuilders competed to create vessels that were faster, larger, and more luxurious. These ships became symbols of national ambition, with companies investing enormous resources into design, engineering, and passenger comfort. You think about how many people were involved in creating a single day of smooth travel. Engineers designed the systems, officers guided the journey, cooks prepared meals, cleaners maintained rooms, mechanics watched over machinery. The luxury passengers experienced was built on countless hours of work. You pass near areas where food preparation is taking place and catch the wonderful smells drifting through the corridors. Fresh bread, coffee, and carefully prepared meals create an unexpected feeling of warmth. It is almost strange to smell such familiar comforts while knowing you are surrounded by a cold and powerful ocean. A forgotten little habit among wealthy travellers was the practice of bringing personal dining preferences aboard. Some passengers requested specific foods, special beverages, or familiar ingredients from home for a person accustomed to luxury. A long voyage did not mean abandoning personal routines. Instead, the ship often adapted to maintain those expectations. You continue walking and imagine the busy kitchens operating below. Meals for hundreds or thousands of passengers required careful planning. Timing was essential. Ingredients had to be stored properly. Staff members needed to work together with incredible coordination. The liner was not only a place where people travelled, it was a place where people performed daily rituals. Breakfast, after tea, dinner, and evening entertainment created a structure that made the journey feel comfortable and predictable. You return to a passenger area and observe the different ways people spend their time. Some travellers are dressed elegantly even though they are far from any city. Others choose a more relaxed style, enjoying the freedom of being away from ordinary responsibilities. There is something fascinating about the way people behave when they are between destinations. They are temporarily removed from their usual roles. A person who is important in one place may simply become another passenger on a ship. A stranger may become a close companion after a few conversations. Researchers continue to examine whether ocean liners of this period encouraged genuine social connection, or simply created temporary interactions that disappeared once passengers reached land. Some believe the shared experience of travel created powerful friendships and memories. Others argue that the social world aboard these ships was carefully controlled by class, wealth, and tradition. The question remains open because passengers experience the same ship in very different ways. You return to the window of your suite and look across the ocean. The storm clouds are slowly breaking apart, allowing small patches of light to appear. The transformation is gradual. The Atlantic does not suddenly become peaceful. Instead, it slowly relaxes, like someone finally releasing a long-held breath. You feel the same change within yourself. When you first boarded the liner, everything seemed unfamiliar. The rooms were impressive but distant. The sounds were strange. The movement of the ship required adjustment. Now, the vessel feels almost like a companion. You understand its rhythms. You know the sound of the engines. You recognize the gentle movement beneath your feet. You have become part of the daily life of the liner. A surprising detail about historic ocean voyages is that some passengers collected small memories from their journeys, including menus, tickets, photographs, and decorative items. These objects might have seemed ordinary at the time, but they later became valuable glimpses into the personal experiences of travellers. A simple dinner menu could reveal what someone ate, how they celebrated, and what luxury meant in that moment. The afternoon passes quietly. You read, rest, and watch the ocean. The ship continues forward, carrying everyone toward the distant shore. You think about the contrast between the enormous size of the liner and the small private moments happening inside it. Thousands of tons of steel move across the Atlantic, yet the most meaningful experiences are often simple. A conversation, a quiet meal, a view through a window, a peaceful moment alone. As evening approaches, the ship begins returning to its familiar routines. Passengers prepare for dinner. Lights brighten the corridors. Conversations become livelier. The storm has become a memory slowly fading behind the present moment. Yet you know the ocean has changed the journey. The calm elegance of the liner feels more impressive now because you have seen what it faces. The beautiful rooms, the careful service, and the steady movement of the ship all mean something different after experiencing the power of the Atlantic. You settle into your suite once more and listen to the gentle sounds around you. The liner continues its path through the winter sea. The people aboard continue their stories. The ocean continues its endless movement. And somewhere beneath the quiet luxury, the hard-working heart of the ship keeps beating. The evening meal becomes one of the most memorable parts of your voyage. After the excitement of the storm and the quiet hours spent listening to the ocean, you find yourself drawn toward the dining room with a renewed sense of curiosity. This is not simply a place to eat. It is a carefully designed stage where passengers gather, exchange stories, and briefly forget that an entire ocean surrounds them. As you enter, the first thing you notice is the atmosphere. Warm light reflects from polished surfaces. Conversations rise and fall gently around the room. The sound of silverware touching plates blends with quiet laughter and the soft movement of waiters moving between tables. Outside, the Atlantic remains vast and cold, but inside, the dining room feels like a world separated from the weather. You take your seat and look around. Every passenger seems to have their own little story. A couple discusses plans for their arrival. A businessman reviews papers between courses. A family shares details about their journey so far. The dining room creates a temporary gathering place where people from different backgrounds experience the same meal at the same moment. During the early 20th century, first-class dining aboard ocean liners became famous for offering elaborate meals that rivaled the finest restaurants on land. Menus often included multiple courses, carefully prepared dishes, and formal service for wealthy travellers. Dining was not only about satisfying hunger, it was a social performance where manners, conversation, and presentation were all important parts of the experience. You notice the careful attention given to every detail, the arrangement of the table, the timing between courses, the quiet confidence of the staff. Nothing appears rushed. The entire evening encourages passengers to slow down and enjoy the moment. You might find it amusing that while the ship is crossing one of the most unpredictable oceans on Earth, people are still discussing dessert choices with great seriousness. Human beings are wonderfully talented at creating small comforts even in unusual situations. Give someone a beautifully prepared meal, a comfortable chair, and a pleasant conversation, and they may briefly forget they are floating in the middle of the Atlantic. A curious custom from luxury liner dining was the popularity of printed menus as keepsakes. Passengers sometimes saved them as souvenirs of their journey. These menus were more than simple lists of food. They captured a moment in time, revealing what travellers ate, how meals were presented, and what ideas of elegance existed during that period. You hold the menu in your hands and imagine someone decades later discovering the same piece of paper inside an old collection. A forgotten dinner aboard a winter Atlantic crossing suddenly becomes a small window into another world. The meal continues, and you begin to understand that dining aboard the liner is part of a larger social ritual. In ordinary life, meals often happen quickly between responsibilities. Here, dinner becomes an event. People dress carefully. They meet others. They spend hours talking. This slower pace reflects a different approach to travel. A journey across the ocean required patience. There was no rushing from one destination to another. The voyage itself was part of the experience. And meals became important markers throughout the day. You think about the people who created this system, the chefs preparing food below deck, the servers remembering passenger preferences, the workers organising supplies. A grand dining room may appear effortless, but behind every elegant evening is a complex network of planning. One overlooked detail of historic ship dining is that kitchens had to adapt to the limitations of life at sea. Supplies needed careful management because fresh ingredients were not unlimited. Storage, preparation, and timing required careful coordination. Creating a restaurant-like experience on a moving ship demanded both creativity and discipline. As you continue eating, you notice how the movement of the liner affects the room. The ship rises slightly and settles again. Glasses are handled carefully. Staff members adjust naturally. Experienced crew members seem almost connected to the motion of the vessel, moving with the rhythm of the waves rather than fighting against it. You wonder how different passengers interpret this experience. For some, the movement of the ship adds excitement. For others, it creates discomfort. The same ocean that inspires one person may make another long for solid ground. The legacy of luxury ocean travel remains a subject of discussion among historians and cultural researchers. Some experts view these dining experiences as examples of extraordinary craftsmanship and hospitality, showing how people transformed transportation into an art form. Others believe they represented a world of privilege that existed alongside much greater social inequality. The meaning of these elegant spaces depends greatly on whose perspective is being considered. You finish your meal slowly, not wanting the evening to end too quickly. The dining room remains lively, but the conversations have become more relaxed. People linger over drinks, coffee, and final conversations before returning to their cabins. You walk through the corridors afterward and notice how different the ship feels at night. The bright energy of dinner gradually fades into a quieter atmosphere. The sounds become softer, the footsteps become fewer, the liner begins to settle. You return toward your suite, carrying with you the feeling of having participated in something unusual. It was only a meal, but it represented so much more. It was a tradition, a social gathering, and a reminder of how people create moments of beauty, even while surrounded by uncertainty. The Atlantic outside remains dark, but the ship feels peaceful. The storm has moved farther away, leaving behind calmer waters and clearer skies. You pause near a window and look at the reflection of the lights inside the ship. For a moment, you see both worlds at once, the warm elegance of the liner and the endless ocean beyond it. The comfort created by human hands and the powerful natural environment surrounding it. This contrast is what makes the journey so fascinating. The ship is impressive not because it defeats the ocean, but because it allows people to experience the ocean while carrying pieces of home with them. You enter your suite and prepare for rest. The sounds of the dining room disappear behind you. The gentle vibration of the engines returns as your familiar nighttime companion. Tomorrow will bring more exploration, more stories, and more quiet discoveries aboard this floating world. For now, you settle into the comfort of your room, remembering the evening meal, the conversations, and the remarkable feeling of sharing a table in the middle of the Atlantic. The ship becomes quieter as the night deepens, and you begin to notice a different side of life aboard the liner. During the day, the vessel feels full of movement. Passengers walk between rooms, conversations fill the lounges, and the dining areas create a sense of celebration. But after midnight, the great ocean liner reveals a calmer personality. You step into the corridor outside your suite and immediately feel the change. The lights are softer, the voices have faded. The polished floors reflect a gentle glow, and your footsteps seem louder than they did earlier. The ship is still moving with purpose, but the atmosphere has become peaceful. You walk slowly, allowing yourself to explore without a particular destination. There is something comforting about wandering through a sleeping ship, The same spaces that were busy only hours before now feel almost private. Chairs sit empty, tables wait for tomorrow's conversations. The grand rooms seem to rest along with the passengers. Outside the windows, the Atlantic stretches into darkness. You see only occasional reflections and the faint movement of waves. The ocean at night feels different from the ocean during the day. Without the sunlight revealing its surface, it becomes mysterious and endless. You think about the thousands of people who have experienced similar moments on ships throughout history. The feeling of standing between continents, surrounded by water and silence, has always created a special kind of reflection. A major feature of 1930s society was the importance of ocean travel for international movement. Before commercial aviation became widely practical for long-distance passengers, ships remained the primary way many people crossed oceans. These voyages connected economies, families, and cultures while creating unforgettable personal experiences along the way. You continue through the ship and find a quiet lounge where a few passengers remain awake. One person reads near a lamp, another watches the ocean through the window. A small group speaks softly, their conversation blending with the distant sounds of the vessel. You realize that nighttime creates a different kind of community. People who may have spent the day surrounded by activity now share a quieter understanding. They are all awake at the same unusual hour, listening to the same ocean and feeling the same gentle movement beneath them. An amusing habit recorded from this era was the practice of passengers writing travel diaries during long voyages. Many travellers used these journals to record meals, weather, conversations, and impressions of the ship. Some entries focused on grand experiences, while others described very ordinary moments, such as the view from a window or a pleasant conversation with a stranger. These small observations are often the most interesting, because they reveal how people actually experienced history. A famous ship may be remembered for its design and achievements, but the personal memories of passengers show what daily life truly felt like. You return to your suite for a moment and look around. The room feels even more peaceful at night. The bed is prepared. The curtains move slightly with the changing air. The gentle vibration of the ship continues beneath everything. You begin to appreciate the strange comfort of being carried through darkness. On land, nighttime usually means staying in one place. Here, night means continuing onward. While you sleep, the liner continues crossing the Atlantic, moving closer to a destination you cannot see. You think about the people working while most passengers rest. Officers remain alert. Engineers monitor the machinery. Crew members continue maintaining the ship. The quiet atmosphere above depends on constant activity below. A lesser-known piece of liner culture reveals how carefully ships manage nighttime routines. Some vessels maintain specific lighting schedules and quiet hours to help passengers rest while allowing necessary work to continue. Even small decisions about sound and movement were considered part of creating a comfortable voyage. You sit near the window again and allow yourself to become lost in thought. The storm from earlier feels distant now. You remember the stronger waves, the changing weather, and the way the ship responded. Those moments made you more aware of the ocean, but they also made the calm moments feel more valuable. Researchers have offered competing views about whether luxury travel in this period encouraged people to disconnect from ordinary life or simply created a temporary escape from reality. Some believe the slower pace of ocean journeys allow deeper reflection and meaningful social experiences. Others suggest that the comfort of luxury travel could create a sheltered environment far removed from the realities many people faced on land. Both interpretations reveal something important about the world these ships represented. You walk toward the library area and imagine passengers sitting there years ago, reading books while crossing the same ocean. Perhaps someone was searching for adventure. Perhaps someone was leaving behind a difficult chapter of life. Perhaps someone was travelling toward a future they could not yet imagine. Every passenger carries an invisible story. That thought stays with you as you return to your room. The ship may be enormous, but each person aboard experiences the journey differently. One traveller remembers the meals, another remembers the storm, another remembers a quiet conversation late at night. History is often made of these small memories, not only the dramatic events, but also the ordinary moments that reveal how people lived, felt, and dreamed. You settle back into bed and listen to the sounds around you. The engines continue their steady rhythm. The waves continue their endless movement. The ship feels almost like a gentle cradle, carrying you across the dark ocean. Outside, the stars appear between breaks in the clouds. The liner moves forward beneath the winter sky, surrounded by the vast Atlantic. There is something deeply peaceful about knowing that while the world on land is sleeping, this floating world continues its journey. The crew keeps watch, the engines keep turning, the passengers rest. You close your eyes and let the sounds blend together. The distant machinery, the quiet waves, the soft movement of the ship. For a moment, you are not thinking about where you came from or where you're going. You're simply here, inside this remarkable vessel, surrounded by history, comfort, and the endless ocean. The night continues, and the liner carries you gently onward. Morning arrives slowly over the Atlantic, bringing with it a softer atmosphere aboard the liner. You wake before the ship becomes fully active and spend a quiet moment listening to the sounds around you. The ocean has changed again. The storm that once surrounded the vessel has moved away, leaving behind calmer water and a sky that gradually brightens. You open the curtains and look outside. The horizon is a wide line between sea and sky, with pale winter light spreading across the surface of the waves. The view feels almost unreal. There are no streets, buildings, or familiar landmarks. There is only the ocean and the steady movement of the ship carrying you through it. You prepare for the day and notice how much your relationship with the liner has changed. At the beginning of the voyage, every hallway and room felt like a discovery. Now, you recognize the sounds, the paths, and the daily routines. The ship has become a place you understand. You walk through the corridor and notice passengers beginning their mornings. Some move toward breakfast while others enjoy a peaceful stroll before the day becomes busy. The conversations are lighter now. The storm has become a shared memory rather than an immediate concern. A defining feature of life aboard these vessels was the way they created routines that helped passengers feel comfortable during long journeys. Meals, entertainment, exercise, and social activities followed organized schedules. These patterns gave travelers a sense of normal life even while they were thousands of miles from shore. You enter the breakfast area and take in the familiar scene. Sunlight enters through the windows, reflecting against polished surfaces. The smell of coffee and fresh bread fills the room. Passengers speak quietly, discussing the weather and the progress of the journey. You notice that the storm has changed the way people talk about the voyage. Before, the ocean was simply the background of their adventure. Now, it has become part of their story. People share where they were when the waves grew stronger, how they spent the night, and what they heard while resting in their cabins. You sit nearby and listen to fragments of conversation. A traveller describes the movement of the ship with excitement. Another admits they spent most of the night holding on to their belongings. Someone else laughs about how difficult it was to walk in a straight line through the corridors. There is a certain humour in these memories. A person may begin a voyage expecting elegance and relaxation, only to discover that the Atlantic has its own ideas. The ocean does not care about perfect clothing, formal dinners, or carefully planned schedules. A small but fascinating detail from shipboard life was the popularity of onboard games during long crossings. Passengers often played cards, board games, and other activities to pass the time. These simple forms of entertainment became important because they help people create connections during days spent away from land. You continue exploring and eventually find yourself near one of the ship's quieter areas. The peaceful atmosphere encourages reflection. You think about how different this journey would feel from modern travel. Today, people often move quickly from one place to another. On this liner, the journey itself is the main event. The distance between departure and arrival creates space for thoughts that might normally be interrupted. You have time to observe, to read, to talk, and to simply watch the world outside your window. By the early 1930s, ocean liners represented the height of maritime engineering and international travel. Some of the largest vessels featured impressive accommodations, advanced navigation equipment, and services designed to compete with the finest hotels. They represented a period when crossing the ocean was not only transportation but also an experience of luxury and discovery. You look around the ship and realize that every area reflects the values of that era. There is attention to appearance and tradition and personal service. The design encourages passengers to slow down and appreciate the details. You walk past a quiet sitting area and notice an older traveller looking through photographs. For a moment, you wonder about their story. Perhaps they are visiting family. Perhaps they are beginning a new life somewhere else. Perhaps this journey represents a personal turning point. Every voyage contains countless private stories that never appear in official records. You return to your suite and spend some time looking through your own belongings. The objects you brought with you seem different now. They are no longer just items from home. They are part of this temporary life aboard the ship. The ocean changes how people relate to familiar things. A simple book becomes a companion. A letter becomes a connection to another world. A photograph becomes a reminder of the people waiting on shore. The role of memory in ocean travel is something researchers continue to examine. Some historians believe these voyages created powerful emotional experiences because passengers were separated from their normal surroundings. Others suggest that memories of luxury travel were shaped by privilege and did not represent everyone's experience of crossing the Atlantic. The meaning of these journeys remains connected to both personal stories and larger social changes. You spend the afternoon watching the activity around the ship. The crew continues their work. Passengers continue their routines. The liner moves forward with steady confidence. The ocean appears calmer now, but you never forget the storm. It remains an important part of the journey because it revealed something about the relationship between people and the sea. Comfort does not remove uncertainty. Instead, it allows people to experience uncertainty with greater confidence. As evening approaches, you return once more to your favorite place near the window. The light fades slowly, creating silver reflections across the water. The ship continues toward its distant destination, carrying everyone closer with every passing hour. You think about how many people have stood in similar places, looking out at the same ocean and feeling the same mixture of wonder and curiosity. The liner is a temporary world. It exists between places, between moments, and between chapters of life. You settle into the quiet of your suite as the day comes to an end. The engines continue their familiar rhythm. The waves move gently outside. The ship carries you onward through the winter Atlantic. The voyage is becoming less about reaching the destination and more about appreciating the moments along the way. The next morning arrives with a peaceful brightness that feels almost like a reward after the difficult weather you have experienced. You open your eyes and notice the difference immediately. The ship is still moving, but the restless energy of the storm has disappeared. The Atlantic has returned to a calmer rhythm, and the gentle motion beneath you feels almost welcoming. You remain in bed for a few moments, listening to the familiar sounds of your floating home. The engines continue their steady work. The water brushes against the hull with a softer voice. Somewhere nearby, a steward moves quietly through the corridor, preparing the ship for another day. You realize that the liner has developed its own routine, almost like a small town waking up each morning. People begin their activities at different times. Crew members start their duties. Passengers prepare for breakfast, conversations, and another day at sea. When you step into the hallway, you notice a lighter mood among the travellers. The storm has become a story people tell rather than an immediate concern. Passengers who were once worried now exchange smiles and comments about the rough waves. The shared experience has created a strange connection between strangers. You make your way toward a common area and watch the ocean through the windows. The sea appears endless, but there's a sense of calm returning. The horizon is clear, and the winter sunlight creates a peaceful glow across the water. A major development of the period was the growing popularity of leisure travel among those who could afford it. By the 1930s, ocean liners were not only used for necessary transportation, but also became destinations themselves. Wealthy travelers chose certain ships because of their reputation, design, and ability to provide an unforgettable experience. From departure to arrival. You think about how unusual this idea was. A ship was no longer simply a way to cross the ocean. It became a place where people spent their time, created memories, and enjoyed comforts usually associated with luxury hotels. You continue exploring and find yourself near areas where passengers gather during the day. Some people read quietly, others talk with new acquaintances. A few walk along open decks, enjoying the fresh air now that the weather has improved. You decide to step outside for a while. The cold immediately touches your face, but the sensation feels refreshing. You hold the railing and look across the ocean. The wind carries the smell of salt water, and the sound of waves creates a peaceful background. Standing there, you understand why so many travelers found ocean crossings meaningful. The sea creates a feeling of distance from ordinary life. For a few days, the concerns of the outside world seem farther away. A lesser-known detail from historic voyages was the popularity of taking photographs on deck. Passengers often posed beside railings, lifeboats, or impressive parts of the ship to capture evidence of their adventure. These photographs were not only personal memories but also symbols of modern travel and social status. You imagine passengers carefully arranging themselves for a photograph, adjusting coats and hats while trying to appear relaxed despite the cold wind. It is a charming reminder that even people from another era cared about creating the perfect travel picture. You return inside and continue observing life aboard the liner. The crew members remain busy, but there is a sense of confidence throughout the ship. The difficult weather proved the importance of preparation and teamwork. The people who maintain the vessel often remain unnoticed when everything works perfectly. Passengers see clean rooms, organised meals, and comfortable spaces, but they rarely see the constant effort behind those experiences. You begin to appreciate the invisible work that allows the ship to feel effortless. Someone has checked equipment, someone has prepared supplies, someone has cleaned the hallway you walk through, someone has ensured that every small detail is ready. The relationship between luxury and labour is one of the most discussed topics in maritime history. Academic interpretations differ when considering whether these ships should be remembered primarily as examples of human achievement or as reminders of the social divisions of the era. Some emphasize the creativity and teamwork involved in creating such vessels. Others focus on the unequal experiences of passengers and workers aboard the same ship. You return to your suite in the afternoon and sit near the window. The peaceful view encourages you to think about the journey so far. You remember the excitement of boarding, the beauty of the ship, the powerful storm, and the quiet nights listening to the ocean. Each moment has revealed a different side of the liner. At first, you saw the ship as a symbol of luxury. Then you saw it as a machine designed to face the sea. Now, you see it as a community filled with people, routines, and stories. The voyage continues to change your perspective. The destination is still ahead, but the experience itself has become valuable. You spend some time reading and watching the movement of the waves. The hours pass slowly, which feels unusual and comforting. There is no need to hurry. The ship determines the pace, and you simply follow along. One unusual feature of long ocean voyages was the way passengers sometimes developed friendships that lasted beyond the journey. Spending several days together created opportunities for conversations that might never happen during ordinary life. A person could meet someone from another country, another profession, or another generation and discover unexpected similarities. As the evening approaches, the liner begins another cycle of familiar activities. Lights appear in the corridors. Passengers prepare for dinner. The quiet movement of the ship continues. You look out one final time before resting. The ocean is calmer now, but it still feels powerful. It stretches endlessly in every direction, reminding you that this journey exists because humans dare to travel across something much larger than themselves. The liner moves steadily forward, carrying everyone closer to the distant shore. You return to your comfortable suite and allow yourself to relax. The room feels warm. The sounds feel familiar. The movement beneath you feels almost soothing. The Atlantic crossing is no longer a strange adventure happening around you. It has become a rhythm you understand as you close your eyes. The ship continues its journey through the winter night, carrying stories, dreams, and memories across the water. The days aboard the liner begin to blend together in the most peaceful way. You no longer wake with the immediate thought that you are somewhere unfamiliar. Instead, you wake knowing the gentle movement beneath you, the quiet sounds of the corridor, and the endless ocean waiting beyond your window. There is a comforting repetition to life at sea. Breakfast arrives. Passengers gather. The ship continues forward. The same halls that seemed enormous when you first arrived now feel familiar. You know which corners offer the best views, which rooms are usually quiet, and where you can sit when you want to watch the waves without interruption. You take a slow walk through the ship, noticing details you missed before. A small decorative pattern on the wall, a carefully carved piece of furniture, a quiet reading corner where someone has left a book behind. The longer you spend aboard, the more the liner reveals itself. It's almost like meeting a person. At first, you notice the impressive features. Later, you begin to appreciate the smaller qualities that make it unique. You pass through a corridor leading toward areas that are less frequently visited by passengers. The sounds change again. The elegant atmosphere becomes more practical. You hear the movement of supplies, the work of crew members, and the steady activity required to keep the vessel operating. Records from the period show that large passenger ships were among the most complex machines of their time. They required thousands of individual tasks to function properly, from navigation and engineering to food preparation and passenger care. A successful voyage depended on cooperation between many different departments working together. You think about how impressive this coordination is. A passenger may only see a clean room, a prepared meal, or a comfortable lounge. But each of those experiences depends on a chain of people and decisions. You continue exploring and discover some of the quieter corners of the liner. There are spaces designed for reflection, conversation, and relaxation. These areas reveal something important about luxury travel in the early 20th century. Comfort was not created only through expensive materials, it was created through atmosphere. A passenger needed places to feel entertained, peaceful, social, and private. The ship had to provide all of these experiences while moving across an unpredictable ocean. A surprisingly common practice among travellers was bringing personal reading materials for the journey. Books were especially valuable companions during long crossings because they helped passengers fill quiet hours and escape into other worlds. Some travellers carefully selected novels before departure, while others purchased books from shipboard libraries or exchanged recommendations with fellow passengers. You imagine someone sitting near a window, reading while the Atlantic moves outside. The scene feels almost timeless. You find yourself doing something similar. You settle into a comfortable chair and watch the ocean for a while. The waves create endless patterns, never exactly repeating themselves. The view is simple, but it never becomes boring. That is one of the strange gifts of ocean travel. The surroundings remain almost unchanged, yet they constantly feel different. A cloud formation, a change in the light, a different color across the water. Small variations become meaningful because there are fewer distractions competing for your attention. The world of 1931 was shaped by significant economic challenges, including the effects of the Great Depression. Many people around the world were experiencing uncertainty and hardship, yet luxury ocean liners continued to represent ambition, travel, and a desire for elegance during a difficult period. This contrast makes these ships especially interesting because they existed within a world of both hardship and aspiration. You notice this contrast as you move through the ship. The elegant surroundings feel almost separate from the concerns of the outside world. Passengers enjoy carefully prepared meals, comfortable rooms, and entertainment, while many people on land are facing very different realities. The way historians interpret this contrast has changed over time. Some researchers view luxury liners as remarkable examples of design and human creativity during a challenging era. Others examine them as symbols of economic inequality, showing how different groups experienced the same period in very different ways. The meaning of these ships depends greatly on the perspective being considered. You return to the public areas and watch passengers interacting. The voyage has created small friendships. People who were strangers only days ago now greet each other warmly. Shared experiences have a way of bringing people together. A conversation about the storm, a joke during dinner, a shared observation about the ocean. These simple moments become memories. You think about how temporary this community is. Soon everyone will arrive at the harbour, collect their luggage, and return to separate lives. The people who shared this floating world may never meet again, yet for this brief period, they are connected. As evening approaches, you notice the ship preparing for another night. The lights brighten, the corridors become warmer, the sounds of conversation increase. The liner begins its familiar transformation from daytime activity into evening relaxation. You return outside for one final look at the ocean before darkness arrives. The air is cold but peaceful. You hold the railing and watch the ship's wake stretching behind you. The trail disappears slowly, leaving no permanent mark on the water. In a way, the entire voyage is like that. The ship passes through the ocean, leaving memories behind rather than physical evidence. You think about all the passengers who travelled before you and all those who will travel after. Each person experiences the same ocean differently. Each person carries away their own version of the journey. An unusual reminder of the era can be found in the careful attention passengers gave to documenting their travels. Photographs, postcards, letters, and small souvenirs allowed people to preserve moments that might otherwise disappear. These objects became personal records of ordinary experiences inside extraordinary circumstances. You return to your suite as night settles over the Atlantic. The room feels peaceful, almost familiar enough to call home for a moment. You place your belongings where they belong, settled into your chair, and listen to the ship. The engines continue their steady rhythm. The waves continue their quiet conversation. The liner continues toward its destination. You realize that the greatest luxury of this voyage may not be the beautiful rooms or elegant meals. It may be the rare opportunity to slow down and experience time differently. Here, surrounded by ocean, you're reminded that not every journey needs to be rushed. Sometimes the distance between two places contains the most memorable moments. The night grows deeper, and the great ocean liner carries you gently onward. The morning arrives with a gentle quietness, and you find yourself noticing how deeply connected you've become to the rhythm of the liner. When you first stepped aboard, the ship felt enormous and unfamiliar. Every hallway seemed like a place to explore. Every sound felt mysterious, and every movement beneath your feet reminded you that you were far from land. Now, the vessel feels almost comforting. You understand its language. The low hum of the engines feels familiar. The footsteps outside your door sound like part of the morning routine. Even the subtle movement of the ocean seems less surprising. You begin the day with a slow walk through the ship, allowing yourself to observe the details that have become easy to overlook. The polished surfaces still shine, the decorations still display the confidence and creativity of the era. The elegant rooms still create a sense of luxury. But now you see something beyond the beauty. You see the effort. You notice the hands behind the experience, the people who clean before passengers arrive, the workers who prepare supplies, the engineers who monitor the systems, the crew members who ensure that the ship continues moving safely across the Atlantic. The liner may appear effortless, but nothing about it happens without careful work. One important reality of the era was that ocean travel depended heavily on skilled maritime workers. Before modern automation transformed transportation, ships required large crews to manage navigation, machinery, hospitality, and safety. The success of a voyage depended on human knowledge and cooperation. You watch crew members moving through their duties and begin to appreciate how different their experience is from that of the passengers. While travellers enjoy the view, meals, and comfort, the crew must maintain focus throughout the entire journey. You think about the invisible nature of their work. The best service often feels unnoticed because everything happens smoothly. When a room is clean, a meal arrives on time, or a problem is solved quietly. Passengers may never know how much effort was required. You walk toward a quieter section of the ship and discover areas where the atmosphere changes. These spaces are more practical, designed for function rather than admiration. The contrast between public elegance and behind-the-scenes activity reveals the complexity of life aboard a luxury liner. A charming oddity of shipboard routines involved the careful management of passenger belongings. Some travellers brought large collections of clothing and personal items because formal occasions were an important part of the voyage. A long Atlantic crossing could include several opportunities for evening events, and passengers often packed according to social expectations of the time. You imagine the preparation involved suitcases filled with carefully chosen outfits, personal items arranged inside cabins, passengers deciding what to wear for dinner, conversations and special occasions. Today, packing for a trip may mean choosing what fits into a small bag. In this era, travel could involve bringing an entire version of your life with you. You continue through the ship and observe how different passengers spend their time. Some are enjoying the last stages of the voyage by relaxing quietly. Others are becoming more focused on arrival, discussing plans for when they reach shore. The feeling of being between worlds begins to change. At the beginning of the journey, departure felt important. Now, arrival is slowly approaching. Yet you notice that many passengers are not rushing toward the end. They have grown accustomed to this floating routine. The ship has offered something unusual, a pause between ordinary chapters of life. Researchers continue to question whether long ocean journeys encouraged deeper reflection because they removed people from their normal environments. Some believe the slower pace of sea travel allowed passengers to experience time differently and form meaningful connections. Others argue that the experience was shaped by privilege, since only certain travellers could enjoy the comfort and leisure associated with luxury crossings. The historical meaning of these voyages remains open to interpretation. You return to your suite and spend time looking through the window. The ocean is calm, but it still holds a sense of mystery. Even after days at sea, the horizon remains unchanged. This endless view creates a strange feeling. You are moving constantly, yet the scenery appears almost still. The ship travels many miles each day, but the ocean gives few visible signs of progress. Perhaps this is why ocean travel has always encouraged reflection. Without the usual landmarks of land, your attention turns inward. You think about the people who built this ship, the designers who imagined its shape, the workers who constructed its enormous structure, the craftsmen who created the beautiful details inside. Every part of the liner represents thousands of decisions made by people who believed this kind of travel was possible. A small forgotten detail from these voyages was the popularity of shipboard photographs, showing passengers enjoying leisure activities. Images of people walking on deck, sitting in lounges, or enjoying meals helped create the public image of glamorous ocean travel. These photographs were carefully preserved because they represented more than a vacation. They represented a modern lifestyle. You look around and imagine those photographs being taken here decades ago. The clothing styles have changed. The technology has changed. But the human desire to remember special moments remains exactly the same. As afternoon arrives, you notice the ship preparing for another evening. The familiar patterns return, staff members organize rooms, passengers gather in common areas. Conversations begin to fill the corridors. You return to your favorite place near the window and watch the sunlight fade across the water. The journey has given you time to notice things that are often forgotten in everyday life. The importance of patience, the value of quiet moments, the beauty of simply observing. The liner continues forward, carrying everyone closer to the distant harbour. Soon, the routines that have become familiar will come to an end. The private world created by the ship will slowly disappear. But for now, you remain aboard. You listen to the gentle movement of the vessel and allow yourself to enjoy these final days of ocean life. The ship continues through the winter Atlantic, surrounded by water, history, and countless stories. The journey is nearing its next chapter, but the memories created here will travel much farther than the liner itself. The feeling of approaching land begins before you can actually see it. There is no dramatic announcement from the ocean, no clear line where one world ends and another begins. Instead, you sense the change through small details. The conversations aboard the liner become more focused. Passengers begin organizing their belongings. Plans for arrival appear in discussions throughout the ship. You wake and notice a different kind of energy in the corridors. The familiar calm remains, but there is also anticipation. After days surrounded by endless water, the idea of seeing land again feels almost surprising. You stand near your window and look across the Atlantic. The ocean that once seemed infinite now feels like the final chapter of the voyage. You think about everything that has happened since you first stepped aboard. The excitement of departure, the elegance of your suite, the winter storm, the quiet nights, the countless small moments that transformed a simple crossing into a personal experience. You begin walking through the ship with a sense of appreciation. Places that once seemed ordinary now carry memories. The dining room reminds you of conversations shared over meals. The lounge brings back evenings spent listening to stories from other passengers. The corridors remind you of quiet walks while the ship moved through darkness. A major feature of passenger travel during this period was the importance of arrival ceremonies and preparations. Reaching a harbour after a long ocean crossing was not simply the end of transportation, it was an event. Passengers prepared themselves carefully, and ships often created a sense of excitement as the destination approached. You notice this preparation throughout the liner. Suitcases appear in hallways, passengers organise clothing and personal belongings, crew members provide instructions and assistance. The floating world that has felt permanent begins to transform into a temporary memory. You return to your suite and begin arranging your own belongings. The room feels different now at the beginning of the journey. It represented a new beginning. Now, it feels like a place you are preparing to leave behind. You run your hand along the furniture and remember the first night aboard. You remember listening to the engines and wondering what the days ahead would bring. You could not have known that the storm, the quiet evenings, and the peaceful routines would become such important parts of the experience. A small but fascinating detail from ocean travel was the tradition of exchanging final greetings among passengers who had formed friendships during the crossing. Some travellers wrote addresses in notebooks, promising to stay in touch after reaching land. Others simply shared one last conversation before returning to their separate lives. You imagine these moments happening throughout the ship. Two people who met at dinner sharing contact information. A family thanking a crew member for kindness. A passenger taking one final photograph from the deck. The approaching harbour creates a strange mixture of emotions, There is excitement because the journey is almost complete. There is also a quiet sadness because the special world created aboard the liner is disappearing. You step outside and feel the cold air around you. The ocean breeze is familiar now. The sound of waves that once felt unfamiliar has become something you recognize. You look back at the ship itself and appreciate its scale. It is easy to focus on the luxury, but the voyage has shown you something deeper. The liner is a combination of engineering, labor, tradition, and human stories. The early 1930s marked an important transition in transportation history. Ocean liners were still powerful symbols of international travel, but new technologies were beginning to change how people imagined movement across long distances. Aviation would eventually transform global travel, making journeys faster and changing the role of ships. The way historians interpret this transition remains complex. Some experts view the great liners as the final expression of an elegant travel tradition. Others see them as part of a larger transformation, where older methods of transportation gradually gave way to newer possibilities. The legacy of these ships continues to inspire discussion because they represent both the height of one era and the beginning of another. You continue walking along the deck and watch the crew preparing for arrival. Their movements are organized and familiar. After watching them throughout the voyage, you recognize the skill behind their work. The passengers may remember the beautiful rooms and meals, but the crew members are part of the reason those experiences were possible. They carried out countless tasks that allowed everyone else to enjoy the journey. You think about how history often focuses on famous ships, famous passengers, and major events. Yet the true character of a voyage is also found in ordinary moments. The person who prepared a meal, the worker who cleaned a hallway, the passenger who shared a quiet conversation with a stranger. These small actions create the feeling of a living world. You return inside as the ship continues toward the harbour. The atmosphere is becoming busier, but you still find moments of calm. You sit near the window one last time and watch the changing view. The ocean no longer feels like an endless mystery. It feels like a place you have crossed, experienced, and remembered. A surprising habit among some travellers was keeping small objects from their journeys as reminders of places they had visited. A ticket, a menu, a photograph, or a small souvenir could preserve an entire experience. These objects became personal connections to moments that might otherwise fade with time. You understand why people save these memories. A voyage like this is not only about arriving somewhere new, it is about the person you become while travelling. The evening arrives, and the ship prepares for its final night before reaching shore. The familiar sounds continue around you, but now they carry a different meaning. The engines still hum, the waves still move, the lights still glow softly in the corridors. Yet you know the journey is changing, soon. The great ocean liner will no longer be your entire world. Soon, you will walk on solid ground again. The routines of the ship will be replaced by the routines of land. For now, you allow yourself one final evening aboard this floating palace. You sit quietly and listen to the vessel that has carried you through storms. Calm waters and countless memories. The Atlantic crossing is almost complete, but the story is not quite finished. The final hours aboard the ocean liner arrive quietly, almost as if the ship itself understands that this chapter is ending. You wake to a familiar feeling beneath you, the gentle movement of the vessel, the low vibration of the engines, the soft sounds of a crew beginning another day. But something feels different. You open the curtains and look outside. The endless horizon that surrounded you for so many days has changed. The view is no longer only ocean and sky. There are signs of land nearby. The world that seemed so distant is slowly returning. You stand there for a moment, taking in the scene. It is strange how quickly a place can become familiar. Not long ago, you stepped aboard this liner carrying luggage and curiosity. The ship felt enormous, almost overwhelming. Now, the idea of leaving feels unusual. This floating world has become part of your routine. You walk through the corridors one more time, allowing yourself to remember the journey. The polished walls, the quiet corners, the dining room filled with conversation, the lounge where passengers spent peaceful evenings, the window where you watched storms, sunsets, and endless waves. Every location carries a memory. You pass other passengers preparing for arrival. The mood is a mixture of excitement and reflection. People are eager to reach their destination, but many also seem reluctant to leave the comfortable rhythm of life aboard the liner. A voyage across the Atlantic was more than transportation. At the time, crossing the ocean represented a significant transition between worlds. Travelers were not simply moving from one location to another. They were leaving behind one environment and entering another, with days of ocean between the two. The liner belonged to a generation shaped by confidence in engineering and progress. Large passenger ships represented the belief that human creativity could overcome enormous challenges. Their size, speed, and elegance demonstrated what technology could achieve during the early 20th century. You look around and think about the people who made this journey possible. The designers who planned the ship's structure, the builders who created thousands of individual parts, the crew members who maintained order throughout the voyage. The liner is not just a vessel, it is a collection of human effort. You walk toward the deck and feel the fresh air around you. The ocean breeze feels familiar now. You remember your first day aboard when the sea seemed mysterious and distant. After everything you have experienced, it feels almost like an old companion. You watch the crew preparing for the final approach. Their movements are practiced and efficient. They have completed this process many times before, but for passengers, this moment feels unique. A forgotten piece of shipboard life was the importance of final routines before arrival. Passengers often checked belongings repeatedly, reviewed travel documents, and prepared clothing suitable for stepping onto land. After spending days in a self-contained world, returning to ordinary life required a surprising amount of adjustment. You smile at the thought, even after crossing an ocean, people still worry about finding the right coat, organizing their luggage, and making sure they have not forgotten something important in their room. Human nature remains the same whether someone is boarding a train, leaving a hotel, or stepping off a luxury liner. You return to your suite and take one final look around. The room that once felt like a temporary space now feels filled with memories. You remember resting here during the storm. You remember listening to the ocean at night. You remember the quiet moments when the world outside seemed impossibly large. The room itself has not changed. You have. Experts still examine the question of why ocean liner journeys remain so fascinating long after the ships themselves have disappeared from everyday travel. Some believe these vessels represent a romantic period when travel encouraged patience, conversation, and personal discovery. Others suggest that nostalgia sometimes hides the complicated realities of the era, including social divisions and unequal experiences among passengers and workers. The meaning of these voyages continues to depend on the stories we choose to remember. You understand why the debate exists. The liner has shown you many different truths at once. It was beautiful, it was complicated, it was impressive, it was imperfect. History rarely fits into a single simple description. You spend your final hours walking through familiar spaces and noticing small things you ignored before. A lamp glowing in a quiet hallway, the sound of footsteps from a passing crew member, the reflection of sunlight on polished wood. These details seemed ordinary when you first arrived, but now they feel valuable because they belong to a moment that is almost over. One curious practice among travellers was collecting small reminders of their voyages, not only photographs and menus but also personal notes, tickets, and written memories. These simple objects allow people to preserve the feeling of movement and adventure long after they returned home. You imagine someone years later opening an old drawer and discovering a reminder of this exact type of journey. A small object becomes a doorway back to the ocean. the ship, and the feeling of being between two shores. The liner continues its approach. The distance between ship and land becomes smaller with every passing hour. Soon, the quiet isolation of the Atlantic will be replaced by streets, buildings, and familiar sounds. The steady rhythm of the ship will be replaced by the unpredictable rhythm of everyday life. You feel grateful for the pause this voyage provided. There was something rare about being disconnected from the usual speed of the world. The ocean forced you to slow down. It encouraged observation. It created space for thoughts that might otherwise disappear. As evening arrives, you spend one final night aboard the liner. The ship remains warm and welcoming. The lights still glow. The engines still hum. But now, you know the journey is nearly complete. You lie back and listen carefully. The sounds are the same ones you heard on your first night. The difference is that now they are familiar. The great ocean liner carries you towards shore, but a part of you remains connected to the endless water behind you. The storm, the calm days, the conversations, and the quiet moments have become part of your own travel story. Tomorrow, you will step onto land again. Tonight, you remain aboard. One final night in this floating world. The morning of arrival begins gently, almost quietly enough that you wonder if the voyage is truly ending. You wake in your suite and listen for the familiar sounds that have accompanied you across the Atlantic. The engine still beneath the floor. The ship still moves with a steady rhythm. The walls still carry the quiet sounds of a living vessel. But there is a difference. The journey has reached its final moments. You open the curtains and see signs of the harbour ahead. The ocean that surrounded you for so many days is now sharing space with the shapes of land. The sight feels strangely emotional. After spending so much time surrounded by endless water, even the smallest glimpse of shore feels remarkable. You dress slowly, not wanting to rush through these last hours. Every action feels meaningful now. Packing your belongings, folding clothing, looking once more around the room, these ordinary tasks become part of your farewell. The suite that once represented the beginning of an adventure now represents the memory of one. You walk through the liner for the final time, letting yourself notice the details. The polished wood still shines. The lights still create their warm glow. The corridors still carry the quiet footsteps of passengers and crew. The ship has not changed. Your relationship with it has. When you first arrived, you saw a luxurious ocean liner. Now you see something more complicated and more human. You see the workers who kept it moving. You see the passengers who created stories within its walls. You see the engineering, planning, and tradition that allowed this floating world to exist. The liner belongs to a remarkable period in travel history. By the early 1930s, these vessels represented the height of ocean transportation, offering passengers a level of comfort and service that was difficult to imagine in earlier generations. They were not only methods of crossing oceans, they were symbols of ambition, technology, and a desire to make even a difficult journey feel extraordinary. You step onto the deck and feel the cool morning air. The harbour grows closer. Around you, passengers gather to watch the approach. Some take photographs, some point toward the shoreline, others simply stand quietly, enjoying their final moments at sea. There is a special feeling when a journey ends. Everyone has somewhere to go next, but for a brief moment. Everyone is still connected by the experience they have shared. You think about the storm that once made the ship feel small against the power of nature. You remember the waves, the wind, and the uncertainty. Then you remember the quiet moments afterward, when the ocean became peaceful again. The voyage contained both, the beauty and the challenge, the comfort and the uncertainty, the excitement and the calm. A small detail that reveals the character of these journeys is how many passengers preserved the emotional side of travel through letters written during the voyage. Some wrote about the weather, meals, and scenery. Others described their feelings about leaving one place and arriving somewhere new. These letters captured something that photographs often could not: the personal experience of being in motion. You imagine those letters being opened years later. The handwriting may have faded, but the emotions remain. Someone once stood exactly where you are standing, watching the same ocean and wondering what the next chapter would bring. You return inside and make your way back toward your suite. The final moments before leaving feel strangely slow. You want to remember everything. The sound of the hallway, the feeling of the floor moving beneath you, the quiet elegance of the rooms, the sense that an entire world exists within this ship. The meaning of these historic liners continues to inspire different interpretations among researchers. Some view them as reminders of craftsmanship, exploration, and human imagination. Others examine them through the lens of social history, considering the differences between passengers and workers and the changing world surrounding these ships. The legacy of ocean liners remains fascinating because they represent both dreams of progress and the realities of their time. You understand why people continue to tell stories about them. A ship like this is not only made of steel, wood, and machinery, it is made of experiences, the conversations shared during meals, the quiet thoughts beside windows, the friendships formed between strangers, the moments of wonder while watching the ocean. The ship slowly completes its arrival preparations. Crew members guide passengers through the final steps. Luggage is organized. Instructions are given. The temporary community that formed during the crossing begins to separate. Soon, everyone will return to individual lives. The businessman will return to meetings. The family will continue its journey. The traveller seeking adventure will discover new places. The crew will prepare for another voyage, and you will carry this memory with you as you prepare to leave. You take one last look at the ocean liner. It no longer seems like an enormous machine. It feels like a place that carried you through a story. A story of winter skies, a story of powerful waves, a story of quiet rooms and gentle nights, a story of people sharing a small piece of time together. You step toward the exit, feeling the solid ground waiting beyond the ship. After days at sea, the stability feels unfamiliar for a moment. Your body has learned the movement of the ocean, and land feels almost too still. You pause and look back. The liner remains behind you, glowing in the morning light. Soon, the sounds of the harbour will replace the sounds of the Atlantic. The routines of the voyage will become memories, but the journey will remain, because sometimes the most meaningful part of travel is not the place where you arrive. It is the person you become while moving toward it. You allow the final images of the voyage to soften in your mind. The great ocean liner becomes smaller in the distance, resting quietly after carrying you through cold waters, changing skies, and endless nights. You remember the warmth of the suite, the gentle glow of the corridors, and the peaceful rhythm of the engines beneath your feet. The Atlantic stretches behind you, calm and endless, holding every sound and every moment of the journey. The storm has faded into memory. The waves that once seemed powerful now feel like part of a comforting story you can revisit whenever you wish. You breathe slowly and imagine the ship continuing onward, carrying other travellers, other conversations, and other dreams across the water. The lights remain softly glowing. The ocean continues its ancient movement. The world becomes quiet again. For a moment, you're still aboard. You're still listening to the gentle sounds of the vessel. You're still watching the winter horizon. You're still surrounded by the peaceful feeling of being somewhere between places. Let your thoughts become lighter now. Let the details of the voyage drift gently away, like the wake behind a passing ship disappearing into the sea. The journey is complete. The ocean is peaceful, the night is quiet, and wherever you're resting, you can carry a small piece of this historic voyage with you. Sleep peacefully, knowing that stories remain long after ships have reached their destinations. Sweet dreams.